From the Sutter Club in historical old Folsom, California, the Sutter Gaslighters present Uncle Bob Pinson.
Bob Pinson.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight I'm going to tell you the true story of Cinderella as presented by the Goose Creek, South Carolina, down-home players. Now, as the curtain rises for the first act, we see Cinderella. And she's sitting all alone in the chimney corner, gnawing on a kosher charcoal broiled pig knuckle sandwich on raisin bread. And under her breath, she's whistling Tea for Two. About that time, in walks her two old mean evil stepsisters, Priscillope and Penelope. And Priscillope speaks to Penelope with her quaint medieval accent. She says, "Hey, Penelope." Penelope say, "Home." She says, "You aiming to go to that royal ball Saturday night?" Penelope says, "Is grits groceries?" She say, "Uh-huh." She say, "Well, what you gonna wear to it?" Penelope said, "Oh, I thought I would wear my sleek satin strapless double-breasted evening gown, my tan turtleneck sweater, and my sapphire-studded combat boots." Priscilla said, "You gonna be the slickest chick this side of the creek." She say, "Uh-huh." About that time, Cinderella speaks up. And she say, "Oh, I pray thee, evil stepsister, could I go to the ball with y'all?" They say, "Who you kidding, gal? You know you can't go to no royal ball looking like something left over from urban renewal." And say, "Besides that, you must stay home and cook up something to eat for your ugly stepmother, who is out participating in a demonstration against water fluoridation." Cinderella say, "Oh, suffering succotash," as the curtain falls on the first act. Now, as the curtain rises for the second act, it's the night of the royal ball. The two mean evil stepsisters has done got dressed up and gone off to it. The ugly stepmother isn't home yet. So we see Cinderella, and she's sitting all alone in the chimney corner, and she's wiping the pig knuckle grease off her chin and saying, "Woe is me." Now, about that time, there's a knock on the door. Blamp, blamp, blamp. Cinderella say, "Hearken. Who that knocking outside the threshold?" Little voice come back say, "It ain't none of Avon." Cinderella said, "Well, who it is?" She say, "It's I, your good fairy godmother." Cinderella said, "Well, good godmother." "Well, good godmother." Say, "Just lift the latch and come on in." So the godmother come in to where Cinderella's sitting there on the floor, and she says, "Cinderella, how come it is that you're not out at the ball?" Cinderella says, "Are you kidding? I wouldn't be caught in Roseville looking like this." Godmother said, "Don't you worry your pretty head about that, honey child." Says, "I can take care of that right now." You know, not like mousy rat, like rat mouse. So she take in hand this magic pole, and she commenced to wave it about, and she say the magic words, "Hocus pocus, two bugs and a locust." Cinderella's dirty rags turn into a beautiful evening gown. And on her feet, she's got a pair of pretty little crystal glass slippers. Godmother says, "Now, Cinderella, you ready for the ball?" She said, "Uh-huh," but say, "How am I supposed to get there? Hitch a ride with Jackie Onassis?" Godmother said, "Don't you never underestimate the power of this magic pole." Says, "Do you have some white mice and a pumpkin?" Cinderella said, "Well, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am." Says, "I got a dozen white mice in the bureau drawer. But says, us done one slap dab out a pumpkin. Could you use a rutabaga?" Godmother said, "Uh-huh." Say, "Go fetch it." So she takes the magic pole again, and she commenced to wave it about with wild abandon. And the white mice turned into 12 white horses. And the rutabaga turned into a royal coach, double clutch loaded, with 4 on the floor and a 5th in the glove compartment. She said, "Now, Cinderella, you're ready for the ball. But say, remember one thing, honey child. All this here magic jazz is going to wear off at midnight." And so she departed. Cinderella started to climb aboard the royal coach, and she was a little bit nervous. And she hit a little glass slipper against the running board, and it fell off and hit the cobblestones crunch. Well, it didn't sound like that, but I can't make a noise like tinkle, tinkle. Oh, Cinderella became panicky. And when you panicky, you out of it. So she commenced to look and hereabouts and thereabouts and the roundabouts, and she opened the closet door and found a pair of her ugly stepmother's blue suede tennis shoes. Size 12 and a half, double E. So she slipped them on, tied them up, climbed aboard the royal coach and cut off down through the cobblestones as the curtain falls on the second act. Now, as the curtain rises for the third act, it's the night of the royal ball, and we're at the ball, and this handsome young prince is there. And he sees Cinderella coming in the door, something like Zay gave her. Well, he's a spunky boy, see, and he knows what it's all about because he's done had biology too there at Sacramento State, see. So he walks over to Cinderella with his eyes pink with passion, something like 2 maraschino cherries and a glass of buttermilk. He say, Cinderella, say, you about the prettiest thing I ever seen in my life. Say, you completely bewitched me. She say, uh-huh. Say, I'll bewitch you till midnight. Then I got to go home. Well, about that time, the band strikes up this minuet, or a waltz or something, and he takes Cinderella in his arm, and they commence to dance with them big blue suede tennis shoes just flip-flopping across the ballroom floor. And time passes. Pretty soon it's midnight. The clock strikes 12. Cinderella said, holy macaroni, said, I got to get out of here. So she cuts out across the ballroom floor so fast she'd run right out from under her blue suede tennis shoes. And through the swinging doors as the curtain falls on the third act. Now it's the fourth act. And we see the handsome young prince. And he's sitting in his chamber room on his throne. Maybe it was the other way around. But he's holding these big blue suede tennis shoes. And he calls forth his royal courier. And he say, hey, boy, I want you to go forth and find me the fair Fraulein whose feet fit these fantastic flip-flappers. Because I want you to marry her. So he goes forth and he finds the one whose feet fit. Of course, we already know who it was, don't we? Cotton-picking stepmother. So as the curtain falls on the final act, we see the handsome young prince marrying the ugly stepmother. The 2 evil stepsisters go out and join the Peace Corps. And Cinderella's sitting all alone in the chimney corner, and she's wiping the rutabaga juice off her chin and singing, save that Confederate money, boys, because the South is going to rise again. Thank you. That's presented by the Goose Creek Cultural and Historical Society. Now, Sampson's papa was sitting in the shade of a manzanita bush. He was thumbing through his Sears and Roebuck catalog. His son Sampson drew nigh to him and he say, hey, Papa, and his papa say, home. Say, Papa say, I done made my mind up. Say, I'm going to marry a girl. And his papa say, you have made a wise choice there. He said, but for a few minutes you had me worried the way you've been running around here with your hair down like that. What her name is? He said, oh, you probably don't even know her, Papa. Say, her name's Eliza. And say, she's this chick I met over there at Sinai in this little roadhouse doing the dance at 7 Bay. Papa say, son, say, I'm really disappointed in you. Going off and getting yourself a wife among them uncertified Egyptians. What's the matter with these nice young Jewish girls you in your own neighborhood? He say, oh, Papa, say, they all right, I guess. And say, that Eliza, man, say, she turns me on. Say, she's 5'2", got eyes of blue, and she's got a shape like a brick shipyard. Papa say, her do, and he say, oh. Say, in the morning, say, I'm going to journey forth to her father, and I'm going to beseech him for her hand in marriage. So early the next morning, he girded his loins and put on all his fine raiments, and he goes over and commenced to beseech Eliza's papa. He said, you must be out of your cotton-picking mind, boy. See, I wouldn't let Eliza marry the likes of you and say, besides that, say, I've already got a promise to Ahab, Adab, a Sabarab, who is a scribe and a Pharisee, see? This tore Sampson up because he considered this a personal affront to him, and he freaked out. That night when nobody wasn't watching, he went out and set a torch to the vegetable garden and burned them down. Then he went off and hid out until the heat died down. And next morning they woke up and see what had happened, and they were irate. Oh, they was tore up, and they called together a meeting of the NAASPC. That's the National Society to Save Our Pea Crops, see? They all marched on the King's Palace and were screaming and hollering and shouting and carrying on and shouting out anti-Semitic slogans like matzo balls is fattening. Barbara Streisand can't sing worth a flip. Some smart that say Sammy Davis Jr. eats pork chops. The king come out on the balcony to see what all the uproar was about. They say, King, what us gonna do about Samson? The king say, I doesn't know. They say, but King, you like the county supervisor, man, you supposed to know everything. And he say, well, I say, we call together a meeting of the CIA. That's the Committee of Intelligent Arabs. They got together and they say, well, I say, we got to get to Samson some way, and say, I think maybe Delilah's the answer. They say, we get to spy on him. So they called Delilah and they say, honey, say, how would you like to do a little undercover work? She say, well, say, what's in it for me? They say, well, they studied about it a while. They say, well, say, we'll give you a guaranteed 2 weeks at the headliner room and a brand new ruby for your navel. Well, she figured that was a pretty good deal, so she say, you on. And she takes off and she goes, she searches out Samson and she finds him, and she comes to hand him a whole bunch of lies, you know, about how she didn't love Ahab and Abba wanted to marry him. And he was a little bit naive about the whole thing, see. So he falls for it, and he marries her and takes her on home, and they rent them a little split level tent out there in the suburbs. Start setting up housekeeping. Well, that night, Samson went to bed kind of early, and Delilah was sitting there in front of the vanity polishing her ruby. And he said, honey, say, won't you hurry up and come on to bed? Say, I'm kind of sleepy. She said, well, say, I will if you'll tell me one thing. Say, will you tell me the truth? And he said, well, depends on what the question is. She said, well, say, we married now, and said, we supposed to not keep no secrets from one another. He said, who say that? She said, well, everybody say that. He said, well, I'm somebody, so I ain't never said that. She said, sure enough, say, Samson, say, how come it is you're so strong? And he said, well, say, every morning, say, I eat a whole bunch of Wheaties for breakfast. She said, you just trying to be funny now. I said, everybody knows Wheaties hadn't even been invented yet. I said, well, say, if I tell you the truth, will you come on to bed? She said, oh. So he said, well, if you just take 13 pomegranate seeds, wrap them up in a dirty dish rag, turn around 3 times and face the Great Pyramid, said I'd be so weak I couldn't fight my way out of a paper post. She said, that sounds more like it. So she come on to bed about 2 o'clock next morning. Samson's asleep. She gets up and she goes through this here hocus pocus with the pomegranate seeds. Then she come in there and shake him real hard and say, Samson, wake up, to Philadelphia's upon you. So he wakes up and he was so weak he couldn't even raise his head off the pillow. Friends and neighbors, I don't mind telling you right here and now, I don't think that junk with the pomegranate seeds had a darn thing to do with it. He was so weak they pounced on him and they bound him up in chains and took him and threw him in this dungeon. And then they had a big party to celebrate it, and they had a lot of fun and wine drinking and merrymaking and all those other activities that are normal to that type of function. And long about 2 o'clock in the morning, they grew tired, and somebody suggested they bring Samson up there so they could poke a little fun at him. So they brought him up there. Say, Samson, say, how about telling us a real good Jewish joke? He say, nay, nay, not so. But say I can know a good Italian joke to tell you. Said that there was these 2 Roman soldiers returning from battle, and on the side of the road they found this dead animal, and they got in a big argument. One said it was a horse, and one said it was a mule. And as the argument grew louder, the captain came by, and seeing them thus engaged in the argument, he waxed sore. And when you wax sore, man, you're mad. So he rebuked them and told them it was neither a horse nor a mule, but merely an ass. He said, now, said, go ahead and give it a proper burial. And while they were going about their assigned task, excavating a place for to bury the ass, one of the soothsayers come by, and he say, hey, fellas, say, what are y'all digging, a foxhole? And they say, not according to the captain.
Oh, you fellas seem to like, and girls, seem to like Uncle Bob when he was here before. Would you like to have him come back again?
Thank you, Heath. You know, over the past 8 years here at the Sutter Gaslighters, we've tried to have just a little bit of something for everybody. So this is a fairy story. Once upon a time, there was this young teenage boy, and he lived in this little town overseas. His name was Jack, and he lived all alone with his poor widowed mother and a scrawny old Poland China reincarnated cow named Irene. Now, there had been a famine in the land, and everybody was real hungry. So one morning, Jack came in the breakfast table. He said, "Hey, Mama." She said, "Home." He said, "What us having for breakfast?" And his mama said, "Poke rolls and grits." Say, "Poke your feet under the table and roll your eyes and grit your teeth." Said, "Look like you're going to have to take the cow to town and sell her." Well, this made Jack very sad because he had become fond of the cow. In fact, he had become very, very fond of the cow. Maybe just a little too fond. He took the cow and he headed on to town. He said, "Bye, Mama." And she said, "Adios." Spanish, that means don't be stopping and talking to no strangers. But Jack had just got beyond the first little rise in the road, and he met this dude coming from town. He had on one of these nice little Madison Avenue wash and wear suits. Had his hair all slicked down. He said, "Hey, my young man," say, "where you going with that mighty fine bovine?" Jack say, "Home." Say, "Where you going with the cowboy?" Jack say, "It ain't no cowboy, it's a bovine." Dude say, "You trying to get smart with me, boy, so I'll slap you on your sassy jaws." Says, "You don't know who I am, do you?" Jack say, "No, sis, I ain't never seen you before in my life." But say, "You must be one of them Chico State College graduates." Dude says, "Well, that I am," but says, "How did you know, son?" Jack said, "Well, I noticed your class ring there a minute ago when you was picking your nose." He said, "Boy, say, I'm gonna let you have it." He says, "I happen to be your county supervisor." Say, "It's my job to look out for people like you." Said, "Now, what's your problem?" He said, "Well," said, "we're gonna sell the cow and get something to eat." The dude says, "Well," said, "I think I got a plan for you." So he reached in his pocket and got a big handful of black-eyed peas. He said, "Son," said, "these are magic peas." He said, "You trade me your cow for these peas and take them home and plant them." And said they will promulgate an agrarian phenomena which will aggranize your sustenance. Jack say, "Damn, you smart." He say, you use bigger words than Jesse Unruh. Well, friends and neighbors, you didn't have to look at Jack very long to see that he wasn't playing with a full day. So, he let the dude talk him into trading the cow for the peas, and he goes off home flipping, shouting, rejoicing, and singing, "Does your spearmint lose its flavor on the bedpost?" He got home, his mother said, "Well," said, "how much did you get for the cow, Jack?" He said, "Mama said I traded it for these magic black-eyed peas." Oh, his mother became irate. And when you irate, you flat damn mad. So she grabbed the peas and with one fell swoop, she tossed them out the window, and they hit the ground with a resounding blip. She said, "Just for that," said, "you go into bed without your supper," which was a rather redundant statement considering their circumstances. Well, the next morning, Jack was awakened by this strange pea vine growing sound outside his window. And he opened the curtains and looked out into the big green vine just double clutching by his window. Something like a souped up XKE on a downhill drag strip. So Jack was kind of an impulsive type, and he jumped aboard and off he goes up through the planetoids and the asteroids and the adenoids. He looks off in the far distance yonder and he sees this great big marble castle. He walks up the dusty road and knocks on the big iron door. Plamp, plamp, plamp. The door come open kind of slow. Jack looked up and saw this great big giant lady. Stood about 8 pick handles and a half a plug in the back of tall. She say, "Who are you, young man, and what are you doing in this strange land?" And he said, my name's Jack, ma'am. Say, who are you? She said, my name is Mrs. Green, and I'm the biggest giant lady you ever seen. He said, boy, you better split the scene. Because my husband, John, said, oh, by golly, say, here he comes now. So she instructed Jack to hide amongst the potted plants. Giant come in, clunk, clunk, and he opened the door real fast. And he said, fee-fi-fo-fum. I smell somebody don't use mum. Why, she said, his wife said, hush your mouth, Jolly. Said, that's them hog jaws and collard greens I'm cooking. So, he said, well, before I eat, say, bring me my enchanted harp and my red-eyed rolling hen. So he set the hen on the table and commenced to play on the harp, and the hen started laying golden eggs. Jack got so excited he knocked over one of the philodendrons. Giant looked over and seen him, and he grabbed him right there between the hibiscus and the peony. He hold him up in his hand, he said, you're in a heap of trouble, boy. What you doing here amongst my potted plants? Jack said, well, so I was going to trade you my pea vine for your red-eyed rolling hen. So the giant realized the bargain when he saw it, so he traded with Jack, and the story ends with Jack sliding down the pea vine with his newfound fortune. And the giant's going down the dusty road, flipping, shouting, rejoicing, and singing, there will be peas in the valley for me. This is the one about this white family. Lived down there close to way across Georgia. Now, when I speak of white family, I'm not making no reference to race, color, creed, or place of national origin. It's just that their last name was White, see? And the old man's name was Bob, and the old lady's name was Renso. And they had this little skinny-legged teenage daughter named Snow. Now, Renso was a very beautiful woman, but she was also mean and nasty and vain and haughty and kind of stuck on herself. Every morning she would go into the bathroom and she would converse with the mirror. Just stand up there and talk to it. And she'd say, mirror, mirror on the wall, and the mirror would say, home. She'd say, who's the prettiest girl in Georgia? And the mirror would say, it ain't nobody but you. And all this would inflate her ego, and she'd go around all day with her nose up in the air. And while she was doing this, she wasn't paying no notice to how Snow White had started to fill out and blossom forward. Yeah, she had so much that even some of the high school football players had started noticing her. So one morning she went into the bathroom for her little daily teach-a-teach with the mirror, and she said, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the prettiest girl in Georgia? The mirror said, ain't none of you. All this hacked the fire out of her, and she was taken aback. And she said, well, who it is then? And the mirror said, Snow White. This made her so mad she just like to die, and she conspired to do away with Snow White. So the next morning, she got a hold of this hard hand, and she blackmailed him into taking Snow White off and doing away with her. So he got to Snow White, and he said, honey, say, how would you like to go down to the back 40 and pitch a little hay? She say, uh-huh. So he takes her off down there, but he didn't have no mind in doing away with her because he'd started taking notice of her too, see. So after he got down the back 40, he just spilled the whole works and told her, you know, what was going on. And he said, now you better go off somewhere and lay low and everything kind of cools off. And so he goes on back and tells the mother that he's done the dirty deed, see. But Snow White wanders off there in the swamps. And she did, and she run across this old abandoned farmhouse there that was inhabited by these 7 hippies. There was Harry and Larry and Maisie and Daisy and Sleepy and Creepy and Bruce. Of course, the rest of them didn't have much to do with Bruce because they thought he was kind of odd. But she come up and she knocked on the door, and they come to the door, and she said that she's having a little trouble with her folks, and she'd like to stay with them a while. And they say, heavy man, heavy. In hippie, that means come on in and make yourself at home. So, the next morning, when Renzo went in there to talk to the mirror, and she said, mirror, mirror on the wall, said, now who's the fairest one of all? And the mirror waxed poetic. And it says, Renzo white and Renzo blue. Said, boy, have I got news for you. Cause down in the swamps with the 7 hippies still lives Snow White. You can bet your bippies. All this tore all to pieces, and she grabbed a can of Right Guard and throwed it through the mirror and right through into the next apartment. And the glass broke and fell all over the bathroom floor, tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. And she says, if you're going to do a job, you might as well do it yourself. So she disguised herself as an Avon lady. And she took on this nom de plume. Yeah, she changed her name to Renzo Brown so nobody would know who she was. And she got on the family jackass and rode off. And she gets down and finds this old abandoned farmhouse, and she hitches the mule to the well post there next to the window. And she goes around to the front door and knocks on the door. Blap, blap. The hippies come to the door and she says, hello, I'm Renzo Brown, and I'm your neighborhood friendly Avon lady. And says, I'd like to come in and show you our new variety of essences and colognes. Well, they didn't know what colognes was, see? But they thought it might be something new to get with it with. So they say, come on in, babies. They put some on us, see? She comes on in there. In the meantime, Snow White's done sneaked out the back door out there in the backyard, and she makes a noise like the fuzz. And they heard her, and they thought they was busted and split. Right out the front door, except for Renzo, and she run for the window to jump on the jackass. And she was so excited, she missed the jackass and went in the well and drowned it. She did. She drowned it in the well, and the hippies figured there wasn't much point in taking her right out of one hole, you know, and putting her back in another one. So they just covered the well up with dirt. And on top of the well, they created this great big monument, and on it they wrote these words. Beneath this monument of stone, whereat this plaque is mounted on, resides the bones of Renzo Brown. She didn't know her ass from a hole in it.